Welcome to all of you to our online discussion on what future for Palestine, perspectives on ending the Gaza war, reconstruction and a political process. I am the co-president of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation, and I'm delighted to have you all with us for this pressing and urgent debate. Thank you all for joining us via Zoom and live stream today. Please note that we have a simultaneous translation service. Today's discussion will be mainly in English, and if you need German translation, just change to the German audio channel in Zoom or go to the German live stream. In exactly 6 hours, the 80th session of the UN General Assembly will open in New York. And one of the key topics there will be the war in Gaza and the recognition of Palestinian statehood by major countries such as France, Great Britain, and Canada. Meanwhile, the killing of civilians, the destruction of entire livelihoods, and the forced displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip continue. After the horrific Hamas attack on October 7th in 2023, Israel has reacted to defend itself with airstrikes and troops on the ground in Gaza with the aim to destroy Hamas. Since then, over 60,000 Palestinians have lost their lives in the Gaza Strip, 18,000 of them children. The infrastructure of the coastal strip has been almost completely destroyed, and the enclave's more than 2 million inhabitants have been repeatedly displaced by the Israeli military and crammed into a fraction of the territory. This war has long lost all sense of proportionality in its destructive force. While we speak, the Israeli military is in the process of conquering Gaza City and displacing the remaining inhabitants. And this also endangers the remaining Israeli hostages. The humanitarian situation is still getting worse day after day. Despite a small uptick in aid convoys getting into Gaza during the last weeks, given the long-lasting blockade and in light of an absent functioning distribution mechanism, famine is raging, and it might reach unprecedented numbers if we don't act. In the West Bank, Israeli settlement expansion and de facto annexation are advancing massively. The Israeli government has just approved the new settlement block E1, which will cut the West Bank into 2 parts. And armed settlers commit serious acts of violence with impunity. A political process leading towards the two-state solution is urgently needed to achieve Palestinian self-determination in a sovereign state as a basis for a peaceful future for both peoples, Israelis and Palestinians. But such a political process seems further from reality than ever. This is extremely frustrating, disappointing, and demoralizing, especially for all those who have been working tirelessly for years to promote democracy, human rights, and a political solution to the Middle East conflict. But this is no excuse to give up working towards a political settlement of the war, an end of the occupation, and pathways to peace, upholding international humanitarian law. Palestinians do need our support, as much as our partners in Israel who oppose the Netanyahu government and advocate for an armistice, for a political solution and an end to the war. Palestinians need the support of Germany and Europe, the support of the international community. It is paramount that the international community puts pressure on the Israeli government and on Hamas and helps to create the conditions for an end of the war in Gaza and for entering into a political process. And this brings me back to the General Assembly in New York. In the coming days, the conflict won't be solved. Of course, no one is expecting that. But important steps can and must be taken to end the war in Gaza, to release the hostages, and, at least that is my hope, to open up prospects for security and a more peaceful future for both peoples in Israel and Palestine. Since the 7th of October, we in the Foundation have had several conversations and public events with diverse voices from Israeli and Palestinian civil society and think tanks for a deeper analysis of the political situation. I am happy that today we will have the chance to learn from three distinguished Palestinian experts about their assessment of the current situation and prospects for political advancements in Gaza and Palestine as a whole. We will talk about humanitarian aid, reconstruction, and governance, and we will discuss the potential impact of the negotiations in New York on Gaza. I am extremely grateful for your willingness, Bushra Khalidi, Hassan Al-Khatib, and Mamoun Saiso, to explain realities and perspectives and look forward to your insights. There is a lot to learn, and we need to listen more to overcome misconceptions, ignorance, and polarization to be able to finally act in a sense of humanity. My thanks go to the Heinrich-Böll team in Ramallah and the Middle East Department in Berlin, who made this event possible. I wish you all a fruitful discussion and hand over to my dear colleague, Kirsten Krampe, who will moderate the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our online debate once again. My name is Kirsten Krampe. I'm currently directing the HBF Ramallah office with programs in Palestine and Jordan. And I have the pleasure to moderate the session today. I'm most delighted to be joined, as Emma said, by three distinguished experts, whom I will quickly introduce. Bushra Khalidi, welcome Bushra, is a Palestinian territory policy lead at Oxfam and a seasoned humanitarian policy expert specializing in protection, humanitarian access, and accountability under international law. With a career grounded in strategic advocacy and principled communications, she has been at the forefront of shaping Oxfam's policy responses to the crisis in Gaza and the West Bank. Bushra has led high-level advocacy initiatives on ceasefire efforts, the protection of humanitarian space, and ending settlement trade, always centering Palestinian voices and agency. Welcome, Bushra. Thanks for your time. Our second guest, Dr. Hassan Al-Khatib, is lecturer of contemporary Arab studies and international studies at Birzeit University near Ramallah. He was founder and directs the renowned Jerusalem Media and Communication Center, which specializes in research, opinion polls, and media activities. He was a member of the Madrid Peace Delegation in 1991 and was involved in the Washington negotiations from 91 to 93. Later served in the Palestinian Authority as Minister of Labor 22 to 2004 and Minister of Planning 2005 to 2006. Welcome also, Hassan. Thank you for joining. Last but not least, Mamoun Saiso, who is a senior advisor to the UN and the European Union, specializing in conflict-affected areas across the MENA region. In Palestine, he was head of the national team for Gaza reconstruction under the Palestinian government. In addition, he assumed a leading role in the reconstruction efforts following the wars of, terrible to recall, 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2021. Currently, he provides consultancy services to various international agencies on early recovery and reconstruction in Gaza, Libya, and Iraq. Also to Mamoun, a big welcome. Thanks for joining from Istanbul. I thought we start by zooming into reality on the ground. As Emma noted, today came an evacuation order for Gaza City, the entire Gaza City. So we're all watching the scene in scare. And before we talk about the future, I would like to ask Bushra if you can tell us a bit more about the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip and how it was brought about.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kirsten, and thank you to the Heinrich-Böll Foundation for inviting me and putting this together. And it's quite what's the dystopian to be kind of talking about the future while right now, Gaza City, there was a massive evacuation order this morning ordering 1 million Gazans to flee down south. And this is, of course, not the first time. Most of these residents and civilians have been displaced multiple times over the last 2 years. And so to think about the future, I just got off a call with my colleagues from Gaza. You know, we're all in a panic. We don't know. We don't know what to even tell our staff. Do you go south? Can we guarantee their protection? Do you stay put and, you know, maybe face death? Because you face death whether you go south or you stay put in the city. And so to think about the future, it's difficult, but I think it's extremely important in this moment to be able to have some vision for the future, but also I've learned working with my colleagues, and I have also family. All my in-laws are in Gaza. I've learned that the most important thing is actually to keep hope alive, especially for those in Gaza. And so those discussions also keep hope alive in one way or another. To know that Palestinians have a vision, even if it differs from one another, is extremely important and hopeful, and maintain some sort of unity amongst the Palestinian population, but also for the world supporting them. And so after more than 2 years of war, the Gaza enclave, as you've described it, and I don't want to repeat and be repetitive, but it's been completely devastated, decimated, pummeled by Israeli bombardment, by Israel's siege, and by Israel's starvation. We have almost over 70,000 Palestinians have been killed. I mean, this is a very, very conservative estimate. And yesterday, Save the Children came out to confirm that there's been 20,000 children killed, and those are the ones that we know their identities. These are the ones that made it to the hospital morgues. These are the ones that their parents were able to come and register their deaths with the hospital. This number does not include those that were never found, and those that remain under the rubble, and those that were so decapitated and decimated that they were basically beyond recognition at death. So nearly every family in Gaza today has been displaced, many of them multiple times. And like you said, today famine is no longer a warning, it's a reality. Children are starving to death. We have now 393 people that have died of starvation in Gaza. 140 are children. And when you say 140, it doesn't seem like a big number, really. But I mean, think about it. Think about 140 little children that are starving to death, that have died because they did not have access to the food and to the water and to the shelter and to the safety that they needed, that they died while there was food kilometers away. And I think that number, when you think about it that way, that is huge. And in any other place in the world, if 140 children died of starvation in Germany today, I mean, surely that would trigger the world into a panic. But yet the world remains completely silent, especially the leaders of the international community, and specifically the leaders of Western states. And at the same time, humanitarian aid, which is the last lifeline for the Palestinian civilians, it's being militarized, it's being used, it's being weaponized by the Israeli and the US authorities and instrumentalized. The US is really planned to bypass NGOs and UN agencies in favor of militarily controlled aid centers, such as the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or the UG Solutions or SRS Solutions and other military actors, has completely stripped aid of its neutrality, of its impartiality, and of its independence. And this is going to set a precedent far beyond Gaza, where aid will be used as a weapon of war rather than a means of survival. And like I said, for me, this is not abstract. I have colleagues and friends in Gaza who have lost their homes, their families, their dignity. And yet they continue to show extraordinary resilience and steadfastness, forced into resilience, truly. And every evacuation order means that they're running without nothing. They're carrying their children in their arms, and they're not knowing if they will live tomorrow. And the international community cannot say it did not know. Israel's intentions are clear, and the consequences are unfolding before our eyes. The question here is whether we're going to continue watching our phones in silence and this genocide live stream on our phones, or whether states like Germany are going to actually use their influence and their power to demand a permanent ceasefire, to force humanitarian access, to force the respect of international law. And there are tools for states like Germany that they can use, and they have chosen not to use them. Under the Genocide Convention, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to destroy a people in whole or in part is an act of genocide. And so the siege, the bombardment, the forced displacement, the systematic starvation of Palestinians, these are not isolated incidents. This is a pattern. And UN experts, Israeli respected legal scholars and academics have recognized that these incidents or acts bear all the hallmarks of a genocide. And so, right now, all of these numbers that I'm sharing, these are not just statistics. Every number in Gaza is one family that's been completely broken apart, that is going to be facing long-lasting impacts of the trauma of displacement, of hunger, and of traumatic injury, for example. I'm very grateful for you to have invited me, and I'm happy to also talk a little more about what Oxfam has done and how also our kind of operations have been deliberately and systematically blocked by the government of Israel, where we're trying to simply save lives, support the communities we serve in Gaza, yet we're being completely blocked at every single turn, and the government of Israel will not allow us to do our jobs. I'll stop there and give, of course, the space to my colleagues, but thank you, Kristen, for the introduction.
Thank you very much, Bushra. I think we will take up some of the points you made a bit later and also let you elaborate on the actual relief work. I want to also quickly zoom in with Mamoun, who is originally from Gaza, and you put the map, your home, behind you there, but also the terrible pictures of children and youngsters looking for food desperately. Mamoun, what do you hear these days from relatives, friends, colleagues in Gaza about their struggle for survival, and especially today that the evacuation order came out, just in a nutshell?
Thank you very much. Basically, I'm from Gaza. I live there. And because I was in Gaza before the war, and because I work with the United Nations, I left Gaza just before the war, heading to Iraq. The war took place while I'm in the airport, so I couldn't return back. My family there still in Gaza, brothers and sisters, and I'm in daily touch with them. Back to the story of Gaza, there is misunderstanding. The story of Gaza did not start on October 7th. It has been 50 years under occupation, 17 years under illegal Israeli blockade, and continuous wars against the civilians. We should not forget these facts. As of today, 80% of all structures are destroyed. Now, there is misunderstanding that the current war is against Hamas. No, it's not. The current war is not against Hamas. It's against the Palestinian people in Gaza and also in West Bank. While we are looking on Gaza, but we should not ignore what's going on in West Bank. The war is against the Palestinian people in Gaza and West Bank. The vast majority of victims are innocent civilians, including women, children, and elderly people. The war is not against Hamas because the Christian community was hurt hard. Churches got destroyed in Gaza. Innocent Christian people, our neighbors. I live in a tower. Half of the population are Christians, and many of them could die. So this war is against the Palestinian people. As of today, more than 90% of Gaza Strip under evacuation orders, including my brothers, my sisters, and every day they are calling me in the morning, at night, in the news, when the war will end, what shall we do? Shall we stay at home? Shall we go south? I have no answer for them. The numbers, as said by Bushra, huge numbers got killed, more than 65 killed, 100,000, 50 injured, etc., and more than 50,000 got died due to lack of medicine, etc., etc. As of today, no food, no water, no place, no shelter. And the Israeli new policy now, when they destroy a high-rise building. This building, for example, Susi building has 60 apartments, 60 families got displaced, and the people around, because Israeli target buildings that there is IDP camp around. So with every high building got destroyed, 1,000 of people got displaced to other place. They go to the street and they have no other place to go. My sister was living in the Gaza. She was displaced 15 times. My family displaced 15 times. Last time they were in at Jalal Street and they were under heavy bombardment. In the morning, they shocked to see Israeli tanks approaching their house. Luckily, they escaped. In the last minute, they escaped, and children they got frightened, and they now under fever. They don't want to leave home. They want to leave house. So things are terrible. My brother has a boy. He's handicapped. No wheelchair. No diapers. No food for him. He's sick. Other sisters also, they have no medical treatment for them. So what you read in the news and the reports of UN, it's true, but the story in the ground is much more suffering that we read in the report. So we call upon international community to intervene and to help the people. The immediate answer for us, we need to end this genocide, and after that we can discuss about other agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mamoun, for sharing this very personal account. I think your plight is shared by so many people in the West Bank, in the diaspora, who are daily on the phone with their beloved ones and suffer the pains with them. Thanks for sharing with us. I take your last word, and I would like to turn to Dr. Hassan, talking about the dire need to end this war. It's very hard to imagine that there will be an end to this war on Gaza soon, as we hear politicians in Israel and especially Netanyahu talk about their perspectives. But in perspective, what needs to be done or achieved to end this war?
Thank you very much, Kirsten, and thank you for Heinrich-Böll. That's the question. What can be done in order to bring to an end this tragedy that we just heard details about in the previous presentations or interventions? And the first thing that comes to mind is the role of the big brothers of Israel, as I call them, or the big countries that Israel depends on in order to maintain its military capability and its superiority in the region. Because Israel internally has transformed into what we call New Israel, which is extremely fanatic, right-wing, and aggressive. And there is no hope that one can expect from Israel itself, except a continuity of what they are doing. And by the way, they just bombarded headquarters of Hamas in Doha, probably another assassination attempt. And it's ironic because President Trump issued a proposal and is expected the answer of Hamas. And apparently Hamas leaders were meeting in order to prepare an answer when they were assassinated by Israel, which tells a lot actually about the intentions of Israel in this genocide campaign. It is only the United States and the rest of the Western countries that can play a role in restraining Israel, in convincing Israel, in pressurizing Israel, forcing Israel to stop this campaign. And there is no other parties that can do that. We're grateful for the positive developments in the positions of some European countries in terms of the recognition. We're grateful for the campaign that was established by Saudi Arabia and France on the political level. But without this reaching the point of taking measures of pressure that make difference for Israel, there is no hope that Israel will stop. That's why we have to find ways to increase the efforts to convince European states and United States to try to take more practical steps, more effective steps of the kind that Israel can understand and can listen to. Because otherwise, the Palestinians is not in a position to make difference, neither the Palestinians in Gaza nor the Palestinians in the West Bank. And Israel is not listening to the Palestinians, neither to the Arab countries. Apparently, the maximum the Arab countries are able to do is to try to prevent the mass expansion, mainly by Egypt, and to try to cooperate with Western countries in efforts to try to make some influence on Israel. So my direct answer to your question is that the only way is to double the efforts by the international community, by the countries that has influence on Israel, mainly Western countries, because it is the only parties, the only states that can make difference when it comes to Israel.
Could you also tell us a little bit about how you're seeing the growing resistance against the government's plans for Gaza within the Israeli society?
To be frank, the details of these differences inside Israel over the issue of Gaza is not really promising. And I think that there has been significant negative changes, not only on the level of the political elite in Israel and the government, but rather the society in general. At the surface, it appears as if there is a growing opposition in Israel to the Israeli government and its policies. In fact, what is happening in Israel is that there are two views, and the differences are tactical rather than fundamental. The opposition to the continuity of the war is basically about the need to go for any kind of settlement, any kind of ceasefire arrangements that will guarantee the release of the Israeli prisoners in Gaza. And after that, the Israeli society has no problem with Israel resuming the war, continuing the kind of genocide activities or whatever. While the others, which are the majority in Israel, are not accepting this view and are insisting to continue with their genocide, even while their abducted Israelis are in Gaza. So the differences in Israel are not very fundamental, with the exception of probably a small minority which believe that this war should end. But most of the politicians in Israel are supporting this genocide with these kind of tactical differences that I just mentioned. That's why I am suggesting that the hope of some positive vibrations from Israel that can make difference is very little, and we shouldn't build hopes on it. We need to focus on the countries that might make difference if they have clear and strong and effective position in this genocide.
Thank you. This brings us back to, as Emma said, the 80th General Assembly starting only a few hours from now. So we're all watching this to be started. We know that it is almost certain that the UK, France, Canada, Belgium, and Malta will recognize the state of Palestine at the UN conference on the 22nd of September to be held in a site on the sidelines as a side event to the General Assembly. So 22nd of September will be focusing on the future of Palestine. Again, Rassan, but also please come in, Bushra and Mamoun. Do you see that there is a momentum in the international community, given the UN Assembly taking this up, the two-state solution conference that we witnessed just 2 months before, organized by France and Saudi Arabia, as you had mentioned? Is there a growing momentum for international engagement, and how can we build on it?
I think there is a momentum on the political level. And I think that this recognition that you talked about is very positive and very important. And it's part of the accumulation of the developments within the international public opinion that is going into the right direction. However, it is developing very slowly and without the kind of decisions that can make effect on the ground. Because while it is important to recognize Palestine, the priority now, as we all said in the beginning, is to end this killing, this continuous killing. So, I mean, after this session or during this session, I think that the Palestinian Arab-European diplomacy needs to build on this recognition and go into sanctions. We need to convince important countries to stop sending arms to Israel, because Israel is doing all what they are doing by weapons that they are getting actually from its Western allies. The economic survival of Israel is also dependent on the economic cooperation and support by the Western countries. So we need to build on this momentum by moving into campaigning for practical sanctions that hopefully can be understood by Israel.
Bushra, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I mean, what I think something that kind of is frustrating is, you know, the recognition of the state of Palestine could have happened a long time ago. We should not be waiting for ethnic cleansing in the West Bank and genocide to use recognition like a gift to the Palestinians. It's a right. Palestinians have a right to recognition and have a right to self-determination, and that's protected by international law. And now it's being used by state and weaponized almost as like a negotiation, a fig leaf. It's not a fig leaf, and it should have been given to this right should have been upheld for the Palestinians a very long time ago, and should have nothing to do with the genocide. So I agree, I mean, broadly with Mr. Khatib, is, you know, the international community, in fact, at this General Assembly, they face a critical question. Is there genuine, actually, I mean, my question is there genuine momentum for political action on Palestine, or is it just another cycle of statements without substance? Like, are we just going to put out a statement and recognize Palestine and that's it? And from a Palestinian perspective, momentum, it can't be measured by speeches, right? And just like Mr. Khatib said, it has to be that the world has to be prepared to move beyond rhetoric, and they have to confront the reality of Gaza and the West Bank. And right now, nobody's confronting, with the recognition of the state of Palestine, nobody's actually confronting the reality. We're witnessing what independent UN experts, human rights organizations, respected legal scholars, Israeli academics are describing as patterns of genocide, mass displacement, starvation as a weapon of war, the systematic destruction of life and infrastructure. The current siege on Gaza City marks what many fear actually is the final stage of extermination. Families are facing, like I said, impossible choices. Like they're either choosing to fly into starvation, flee into starvation and overcrowded, basically internment camps, or they stay under bombardment and siege. And in the West Bank, annexation is accelerating. The recent approval of settlements construction in E1, combined with Israel's land registration in Area C, has completely threatened to erase territorial continuity. And it's buried any prospect of a viable Palestinian state. So on the ground, it takes me 2 hours to get to the Nervi village in the Nervi city. So what state are you giving me? You know, as a normal resident, I mean, what state are you giving me as Bushra when I have family in Gaza and I can't see them in a 2-hour drive away? You know, what state are you giving me when my son is 6 years old and he doesn't know his grandparents, his uncles, his cousins, and his aunties, and everybody that lives in Gaza. So, I mean, we can talk all we want about two-state solution, but on the ground, what does that actually mean? And this comes a year after the ICJ's advisory opinion confirmed Israel's occupation is unlawful, and after the UN General Assembly voted for its implementation, yet no meaningful action has followed. So the recognition of the state of Palestine, of course, it's essential, but we have to be very clear. Palestinians can't have, we should not have to wait until after the genocide, after famine, after mass displacement, after we've been erased to be granted recognition. Recognition is not a carrot to be dangled as part of political process. It's a right that's long overdue. It's rooted in international law, and withholding it has only entrenched injustice in Israel's illegal occupation. So recognition alone means nothing. It's not enough. We need accountability. And the ICJ has already ruled that states have a duty under the Genocide Convention to act. So that means accountability for violations of international law, not just symbolic recognition. We need restrictive measures. We need arms embargoes. We need suspension of trade. For example, the EU-Israeli Trade Association Agreement. I mean, the EU is still debating, whether they should be suspending the agreement, and as to whether, there are violations. There's a risk of violations of human rights. When all of the, international experts, legal experts in the world have said that there's a genocide, we're way beyond violations of international law. And a political process has to be grounded in rights and equality and justice, not like interim deals that basically keep the status quo and entrench Israel's occupation on the ground. And it also, sorry, just one more point, and it needs to also include full and equal participation of Palestinian civil society, women and youth in shaping recovery and shaping the governance. And right now, we have not been part of that process at the General Assembly and the recognition of the state of Palestine. Okay.
I will definitely come back to your last point, but I want to stay a little bit. I hear you both focusing on or saying this is more a symbolic act, the recognition, but we need to see action. We need to see sanctioning, arms deals control, etc. And I hear,
Can I comment on that? Just
absolutely.
I totally agree with Dr. Ghassan and Bushra. I'm communicating with the international community every day. Unfortunately, the international community failed us. Israel is a raw state, they don't listen to anything. Of course, we need more influence and pressure from USA, Israel, EU. Unfortunately, Israel does not listen. Now, other than that, we as Palestinians, also we should do our homework. We should not forget that we are not doing our homework. From our side, its time has come to end the political division among Palestinians. Time has come to have a central government across Gaza and West Bank. We should not have two political systems. The time has come to decide who has the war and peace decision. What happened in Gaza, a non-state military group make a decision to launch a war. They did not consult anybody. Is this right? And same group, they are negotiating on behalf of us. Are they entitled to negotiate on behalf of innocent people or not? This is the question. We need to discuss this internally. Who is entitled to go to peace process like Oslo? Who is entitled to go for war decision? And also, we should not talk about only reconstruction of Gaza. We need to talk about massive political reconstruction of the whole Palestinian political regime, starting from all layers of our political system, PLO, the president, the government, etc., etc. So we Palestinians should do our homework first, and we should not blame the international community all the time. Thank you.
Mamoun, thank you for bringing this up. I think we will get into this sort of what has to happen internally quite soon, but I want to yet stay a little bit with what we will see in the next 1, 2, 3 weeks happening in New York. We know that the PA has not been granted a visa to attend the General Assembly. Even the president will not be allowed to speak in front of the General Assembly. Palestinian human rights organizations have been sanctioned by the US just recently, the 3 main ones wanting to attend also in the site event. Yet I hear you, Bushra, saying it should be rather a momentum for rights-based engagement for self-determination, to recognize self-determination. But there's still the question about recognition ahead of a political process as a, yes, true, symbolic act, but also as a possibly, hopefully, sign of commitment. I'm asking you and Dr. Rassan again. And Bushra, you're mute.
I missed just the last part of your question.
I was wondering if we shall not see yes, it is a symbolic act, the recognition, but is it also a sign for more engagement to come? Or like a commitment? Because
I mean, I want to hope so. Again, you said it yourself.
Let me tell you why I'm asking,
Yeah.
because in the German context, there is also amongst the political parties here, there's a lot of debate whether or not to recognize, and of course, you know the German stand in general, and it is sort of a question of whether to recognize Palestine when the political process has been achieved, so to say at the rather end, in the middle of the process, or as other states like UK and France have said right now, because it is so needed. So is there hope in this symbolic act, or is it rather something?
I mean, the fact that it's become such a debate doesn't give me so much hope, right? Like we have been hearing this, by the way, from the French and the Saudi. I mean, this was June 2024 where they had already discussed the recognition. And then, you know, we heard that France might not. I mean, we're still not sure whether there's going to be recognition from the UK and France. Like that's not something that's even confirmed. But again, I think I just want to underscore it's how it's been used as a weapon, right? It's been used as a threat in negotiations, and that's not how it should be used. Recognition should be a given. It should not be a set of negotiations where, you know, we're going to see if Israel changes its behavior, and based on that, we will or not recognize Palestine. Those are two separate issues, and that's how it's been discussed, and that's how it's been presented by those member states. And in fact, I mean, my analysis is that it's been used as a cover for inaction. And that's my sense. And my analysis is that it's likely that once recognition is potentially, if it does happen, it will be an excuse to not further any proper restrictive measures against Israel, because the only thing that actually stops violence and Israel's impunity are restrictive measures, and none of the restrictive measures have been upheld. None of them have been actioned. Only, you know, several states. We saw Spain, we saw Belgium. I mean, these are the actions that we need to be seeing from member states, and those are examples that states like Germany should be following suit. And on top of that, as a bonus, recognition as well. But right now, in order to stop the genocide today in Gaza, Germany should stop selling its weapons to Israel. And then we can talk about recognition and if the German state wants to recognize Palestine or not. But nothing is going to stop Israel's genocide in Gaza and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in the West Bank if weapons and restrictive measures are not implemented on the state of Israel. Impunity will just continue, and we will see the complete erasure of Palestine, and there will be no longer a state to recognize.
I have to unmute. Rassan, you want to add something?
That's unfortunately correct 100%. And as I said, the recognition is politically important, and it's a step into the right direction, and we should welcome it. But in the same time, we should say that this is not good enough, and it is not going by itself to have any direct effect on the main priority issue, which is the need to stop the war in Israel. I mean, the war by Israel against Hamas. Therefore, what I think needs to be done by the diplomacy is to try to build on this recognition. because it is happening and you cannot reject it. It's positive, no matter how not effective it is in practical terms. But I think it allows us, it puts us on a higher ground when we ask for practical measures of the kind you listed, sanctions. Because again, this is the only thing that will have a direct effect on the Israeli practices. So we almost know what will happen in the United Nations. There will be speeches and there will be probably recognition by few states. But I think that the efforts of the Palestinians, of the Arabs, of the Europeans, of the popular movement that is growing everywhere in the world should focus on the need to take sanctions, to go for sanctions of the kind that make difference in Israel, because the objective and the only objective at this moment is to stop the Israeli genocide in Gaza.
Mamoun, I will get back to you, but I want to quickly ask Bushra, what is to be expected also for the West Bank? I mean, is it likely that Israel's prime minister, who faces internal divisions within his coalition, who has not spelled out a full vision for a post-war Gaza, but has increasingly spoken of a permanent Israeli presence in Gaza and annexation of the West Bank, that he will try to fulfill his words? And will we see this most probably as a reaction to recognition and debate on how one could build on this momentum that might be achieved in the United Nations?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I said. The recognition of the state of Palestine doesn't stop Israel's impunity. So we might get recognition next week, but this doesn't stop the settlers that are 1 kilometer away from me from ravaging and displacing entire communities, burning their olive groves, burning down their homes, demolishing their homes. Like that will not just, it won't stop it. I mean, Israel has accelerated measures to consolidate control over Area C, including in May 2025, the cabinet decision to resume land registration under Israeli law. And then, like I said, there was the settlement approvals in the E1 area that we heard about 3 weeks ago, which would effectively cut East Jerusalem off from the rest of the West Bank and make a contiguous Palestinian state entirely impossible. And these steps have followed from the ICJ's 2024 advisory opinion, which declared, again, the occupation is illegal. And so instead of reversing course, Israel has just doubled down, entrenching de facto annexation and basically pushing towards de jure, or what we call formal annexation. Settlement construction, it's expected to continue at record pace with new approvals and legalizations of outposts happening every single week almost. We get an announcement of new settlement units. And settler violence, I mean, I don't even have to say it here. I hope that people here are largely informed on how it's sharply escalated since October 2023. And it's carried out with complete impunity and Israeli military backing. In fact, my home last year in June 2024, in the old city of Jerusalem, was taken over by settlers in broad daylight with the police standing there. And nobody able to do a thing. They entered our home, they changed the locks, they brought in their furniture, and this is how it happens. Now we have the legal resources and the access as a family to be able to fight that in the courts, but most Palestinians don't have those types of resources and access and networks and opportunity. Most of them end up displaced. And so this violence is part of a systematic campaign to empty areas of Palestinians and expand settler control. NGOs, human rights defenders, international organizations, we are increasingly targeted. We have new INGO registration and vetting requirements that have just been issued by the Israeli government back in March, which are going to criminalize effectively aid work. And Palestinian NGOs, as we know, face, raids, asset seizures, defamation campaigns, which is following the same book used in Gaza to undermine humanitarian actors, including the UN agencies. And that compounded with the economic strangulation and the political paralysis that we're also seeing at the local political level, and the internal repression as well that that is happening as public frustration is mounting. From my sense, what's happening in the West Bank, it's not a separate file from Gaza. It's the same policies of displacement, the same policies of annexation and collective punishment that are being implemented, and together they amount to the erasure of Palestinian presence on the land. So unless there's urgent international action, including, like I said, accountability, restrictive measures, recognition of Palestinian rights, what we can expect in the West Bank is further annexation, more violence, deeper economic collapse, and the accelerated and entire fragmentation of the Palestinian people.
Thank you. Very frustrating indeed. And I think as a German, I should say, we're not watching the West Bank enough. Getting all these horrifying pictures from Gaza day by day, it is, as Dr. Hassan told me when we met in Ramallah, it's more of a sort of silent war that is happening every day against the people, but this is not yet getting the full attention. Before I want to talk to Ma'moun about what we're up against in terms of long-term presence of the Israeli army in Gaza, I want to quickly remind us all that we will collect your questions. The participants can put questions in writing in the chat. We will pick them up. I just want to continue the debate a little bit and then watch your questions and see where they fit, or at the end bring them up for discussion. Ma'moun, the Trump administration is currently discussing the so-called Gaza Reconstitution, Economic Acceleration and Transformation, terrible name in itself, the Great Trust Plan that projects a rather futuristic vision of the enclave after Israel's ongoing war. The plan builds on President Donald Trump's controversial February the 4th remarks that the United States would take over Gaza and turn it into a Riviera of the Middle East, also a terrible term, after relocating its more than 2 million inhabitants to other countries. Although we've seen that the White House walked back on those comments, the next day, the Great Trust Plan similarly proposes the voluntary relocation of Gaza's population and envisions a 10-year period of US governance, extensive development investment program, and the construction of 6 to 8 new cities across the Gaza. So it's a commercial enterprise, this Great Trust. A lot of people, Boston Consulting and others, are dreaming of making lots of money. Are we in reality up against the Great Trust Plan? Ma'moun.
Okay, thank you much. Just before going to your question, just now, Israel bombarded and destroyed the Office Handicapped International in Gaza. This is an international organization in Gaza dealing with the people with disability. Their office right now got destroyed. Now back to this Rivera plan. So far, we have seen more than 15 different plans for Gaza reconstruction. Most of these plans were developed in USA or Europe without consultation with Palestinian people and others. So for us, all these plans are just fantasia. What is not acceptable for this Trump plan and other plans, they forget the fact that Gaza is an ancient city. History of Gaza is 5 years of history. You cannot come in one day and you erase the history of 5 years of an ancient city. For us, this plan and other plans like Cape Dayton just came for like security and political reasons. They don't care about people of Gaza. They don't care, just they give false promise about the prosperity of Gaza. We heard so many plans promise Gaza will become a Singapore this is just a lie. I think this plan and the previous plans just to mount a pressure on the Palestinians to accept this. It's like the carrot and stick policy. For us, we are very sure that this plan will not fly. It's just fantasia. And we don't think that Gaza is so much important that Trump will invest in this area. And furthermore, this plan ignores the people. They just deal with Gaza as a desert, as a area in the desert, and they want to construct something new. So this is just fantasia, and this is absolutely not acceptable for all Palestinian Arab countries. So far, the Arab League plan is the only plan is acceptable and is being discussed and being developed further for Gaza reconstruction. Within 10 days from now, the Palestinian Authority will announce the detailed executive plans for Gaza reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamoun. If not, the others want to comment on this. I want to go to relief, recovery, and reconstruction.
Comment
Hassan? Yes.
on this, if possible.
Sure.
I suggest that we take more seriously this American plan. I think it complements the Israeli plans and intentions in Gaza, because I believe that the ultimate intention of Israel in its genocide on Gaza is to get rid of the Gazans population, is to force out of Gaza most or all, but at least most of the Gazans. And then such American plan become relevant and practical and possible. Now we don't see it possible, and we don't take it seriously, and we don't think that it's a real threat, because it doesn't make sense that you do this in a place where there are more than recovery alongside the shore of Gaza. And this is very tempting for Netanyahu and Trump.
Yeah, but 1 minute. If Gaza people know that Gaza will be modern city, Rivera, they will not leave Gaza. They will continue on Gaza. They will continue on Gaza to live in prosperity. So this is just a lie. This is a fantasia. All Gaza people knows that this will not fly. This will not happen. It's just politics. Thank you.
If not, Bushra, you want to also comment on this? We leave it as at this slight disagreement, which maybe is not such a big disagreement after all. I want to, before we go more into reconstruction efforts and relief and recovery, of course, I want to pick up one of the questions from participants, because we just discussed this whole matter of recognition of the Palestinian state. And there's one participant who asked, to what extent does the recognition of a Palestinian state foreclose other possible futures, such as a unitary democratic state with equal rights for all? Does this not then continue to legitimize Israel's unquestionable right to a firm ethno-nationalist statehood? Ultimately, this is at the expense of both Jewish and Palestinian continued existence on the land. Sorry, I lost the line. Is a one-state solution unthinkable? Who would like to go back to this issue? Now, the one-state solution, of course, is a lengthy debate. We will not sufficiently be able to discuss here, but maybe one of you wants to react to the question which I wanted to bring up.
Yes, I can try and start, and then others might step in. We have to be careful about the terminology. We cannot say one-state solution, because the term solution means that it's an agreement between the parties, and there's no way Israel will agree on such arrangements, because one state is not going to be Jewish ultimately, due to the demographic reality and expected future reality. But what is possible, and I think it's most probably what's going to happen is that Israel, which is killing the two-state solution and insisting to maintain Israeli control of different forms and size and levels, but on all the Palestine, all historical Palestine, then Israel is taking us into one-state reality that is going to be an apartheid reality. So, and I think that this is one of the reasons why Western allies of Israel are eager to keep the two-state solution alive, because they are worried that Israel is sort of committing kind of suicide by closing this window, because the only other alternative is not the one-state solution, but the one-state reality, which is going to be an apartheid reality, which is not really good on the long term for Israel. And that's why the closest friends and allies of Israel are trying to warn Israel against such policy. So Palestinians, by the way, are willing to live with the two possibilities. I mean, when there were talks about two-state solution, and by the way, two-state solution means only ending the Israeli occupation on the territories occupied in 1967 and allowing for the establishment of a Palestinian state there, because the other state is already there. So we're not going to come up with two states. We have one and we need to have the other. Whether we like it or not, it's no longer possible, most probably. And therefore, because it's less and less possible, I think that an increasing number of Palestinians are shifting into the other possible solution, which is the one state. And Palestinians don't mind. They don't mind ending the occupation and allowing for an independent Palestinian state, but they also don't mind going into the one state reality and one state arrangements. It is going to be an apartheid reality, but that's not going to be very good for Israel internationally. And we have the example of South Africa in front of us.
Yeah. I'd like to weigh in. I mean, obviously, I'm weighing in from the kind of Oxfam perspective. So Oxfam would not kind of comment specifically on, what it should be, one state, two state. But what I want to say, just like from the kind of international law perspective, because I want to bring that in because it's very important here. I think the urgent questions right now, it's ceasefire, it's protection of Palestinians, it's humanitarian access, and it's accountability. And an end to the apartheid-like fragmentation, separation, isolation that Palestinian communities are experiencing across the territory. So, for, constitutional design, maybe we don't want a democracy. I would assume that Palestinians want, but maybe Palestinians don't want a democracy. That's not what we should be discussing right now. That comes after the basic rights. Yeah, my right to live is secured. So once my right to live and the right of every Palestinian in Gaza and every Palestinian across the West Bank is secured, and the freedom of movement is secured, then we can talk about what this design of a state looks like. And recognition is different than endorsing the endorsement of ethno-nationalism. So recognizing Palestinians, it remedies a structural asymmetry. So occupation, dispossession, it doesn't sacralize ethno-national statehood as the only horizon possible here. It simply affirms that Palestinians, like Israelis, hold collective and individual rights. And so there are multiple rights consistent futures that are available. There's two states, there's a confederation, you guys have a federation. In Germany, it could be one democratic state. I mean, there are plenty of models that we could, but again, it's any arrangement that is going to entrench Israeli occupation or the permanent displacement of Palestinians. That's illegitimate and unlawful. So whether it's a one state or two state. So what must be non-negotiable here is equal rights, return, to Palestinian homes. Palestinians should be allowed to return to their homes. And to their homeland. Power sharing, security for all communities, and accountability. So sequencing here matters. So recognition, of course, it can unlock kind of the legal tools, court access, levers, political levers, treaties, etc. It can, of course, maybe rebalance the negotiations for the Palestinians a bit. And it has to protect land and people from further annexation while leaving the door open to an agreed evolution towards, confederation, one state, two state, whatever the people choose. So I just to close, recognition of Palestine, it's a floor. It's not the ceiling. Okay, right. It stops the free fall into annexation and opens legal space for accountability for Palestinians. And from that floor, Israelis and Palestinians can still choose together between two states, confederation, single democratic, whatever it is that they choose. But we cannot choose a future that normalizes domination, control, and statelessness of Palestinians.
Thank you both. I think this was important to hear from you both, Ghassan and Bushra. Thanks, Bushra, also for the illustration of a house and how it's to be built. We will get to these questions of how democratic the future state of Palestine shall be, and I want to start, however, going back, to this idea of a political process, and you clearly said you laid out the different phases that are necessary. Ceasefire, ending the war, relief. I want to ask Mamoun about this day after, because I tend to still use the term because I cannot, as a person, I cannot give up on the idea that this war has to end. Sorry, the opposite way, of course. And I want to ask you about the day after. And you said there's many plans and many of them are fantasies. But you being an expert on the issue, what should be the priorities in a reconstruction process? And what does it take in coordination and process, security, etc.? So Bushra has laid out sort of the phases, but what is the priorities? What should happen first the day after this horrible war has ended? Mamoun.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, let me brief you about what's going on, because I have been in discussion with UN and EU over a year about Gaza reconstruction. So now we discussed and we agreed with the Palestinian Authority on the governance of construction. Now the World Bank will have a trust fund to manage the grants for Gaza reconstruction. EU said I will have another trust fund for EU. So we ended up having two trust funds, World Bank and EU trust fund. And in the implementation level, we have a Gaza Reconstruction Agency under formulation. This is semi-autonomous agency. And on other that, we have an idea came from Egypt about community support committee to be work under the Palestinian Authority. And this community support committee will be in Gaza for 6 months, rule Gaza under one minister of the Palestinian Authority. And as I discussed with the government, with the Minister of Planning, we know this community support committee is limited to just coordination of relief efforts or humanitarian efforts, and not to engage in the reconstruction. And this shall be for 6 months. Of course, this is not our best as Palestinian, but because Israel and USA refused PA to return back to Gaza and refused Hamas to be in Gaza, so this support committee came as a solution to find somebody in Gaza. So now, after the war, we are waiting for the international conference on Gaza, and there is a lot of discussion, even they discussed and they agreed on the detailed agenda and who will attend that. So we are just waiting for end of war. So this conference will be announced. And on the reconstruction plan, now we are having only one reconstruction plan. This is Palestinian plan merged with the Egyptian plan, became Arab League plan. And this plan accepted by EU for a political reason. A technical reason, we are now working on developing the implementation plans. We have more than 56 programs for Gaza. I think within the coming 10 days, we are clear. We have only one document to be on the table in the donors conference. So by that time, no other plans will not be valid. So our priority now on the governance, one of the mistakes that we did in the past, now the governance of Gaza reconstruction was only from the Palestinian Authority. So now we want to expand this. We want to engage the civil society, and we want to engage the private sector. So we're calling to have a Gaza Reconstruction Council, including the Palestinian Authority, including civil society, and including also the private sector. We see the reconstruction, we like to have inclusivity, all key actors to be inclusive in the reconstruction planning and implementation, including women, people with disability, vulnerable group, etc., etc. And also we like to see local ownership. We don't like the idea that companies from Korea or Turkey or Egypt to take care of the reconstruction while Gaza people away. Any reconstruction plans, implementations should ensure the local ownership. One of the toughest lessons we learned from the past war 2014, now Israel imposed restrictions on Gaza reconstruction. There is a mechanism called Gaza Reconstruction Mechanism, in which Israel has full control for each and every bag of cement enter Gaza. We should take approval from Israel. So this stopped the reconstruction. So now this mechanism should be cancelled, and we should have a mechanism that allows the entry of construction material 24/7, and also entry of the heavy equipment into Gaza, so we can construct Gaza. Now, if we use the previous mechanism, then the rubble removal will take 14 years, and Gaza reconstruction will take 80 years, 80 years. If we remove this Israeli controlled mechanism and we allow entry of material, we are hopeful that we finish Gaza reconstruction between 5 to 10 years. One of the things now, it's painful, but we are discussing this technical level. Now, Gaza has been devastated. Now it's opportunity for replanning of Gaza, because Dr. Hassan was the Minister of Planning, and he knows that the Master of Plan of Gaza was developed in 1996, 95, became obsolete, and we don't have recent urban planning. So now this is opportunity to have a massive master planning for all Gaza Strip, to seize the opportunity. So we have so many things going on related to Gaza reconstruction. On the coordination, now the Palestinian Authority, led by the Minister of Planning, has set a coordination office to coordinate between different players, whether EU, UN, Arab donors, etc., and it's going smoothly. I will stop here because so many details related to Gaza reconstruction. Thank you.
I imagine, I just want to ask you back on the Gaza reconstruction mechanism. I mean, that seems so crucial.
Yes.
That everything we've seen, and I remember there was an Oxfam report also in
I wanted to mention
2015.
that.
So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what was the problems? Clearing the rubble, bringing in materials, who is controlling what? Is it similar to the relief, control, blockades, whatever?
Yes, GRM mechanism was agreement between Israel and Palestinian Authority, and brokered by the United Nations. Unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority signed this agreement without consulting the expert. Now, as per this agreement, Israel has control of everything. You cannot construct any project unless you apply to Israel and you get approval. That time I was the head of national reconstruction team, and we made calculations that Israel waiting period around 224 days to send approval. So all reconstruction got penalized. You cannot bring cement unless you approve from Israel. You cannot hire contractor unless Israel agree. And even for the houses, if my house got destroyed, I need to send full file to Israel, including the GPS of my location, including the layout of the house. This is the bedroom, this is the kitchen, and all Gaza houses reconstructed after 2014 goes to Israel security forces, and now they know very well, and they make use of this data this Hamas leader, this is his house, now it's midnight, he should be in this bedroom, so they target him directly. So this GRM, as calculated by United Nations, if we use the GRM again, if the Israel refuse to allow heavy equipment, because in Gaza we're having only 100 trucks. If we want to remove the rubble using 100 trucks, it takes 14 years. That time, United Nations refused the GRM, and they asked the Palestinian Authority to negotiate back with Israel. And after 1 year of negotiation, they improved GRM little bit. So for us and for UN and EU, they all agreed that this mechanism should be abolished, and we need a new mechanism that allow entry of material 24/7, and Israel has no right to object the reconstruction of houses and other civil projects. Thank you.
Yet I do understand this is up for negotiations, and that's already part of the political process. I mean, the conditions for reconstruction will be determined by also Israel. So I want to ask Bushra to comment on this, but also I will ask you to focus more on the relief aspect of reconstruction and what's. I mean, the challenges are. I don't want to throw in more numbers as we've heard in the beginning, but like almost 2 million displaced without housing, almost all infrastructure destroyed, all economic and agrarian livelihood or production sites destroyed. It's immense this time. So relief seems to be like the most important priority for people to stay. We've seen the dismantling of a whole structure of a relief system with the United Nations, and you already said Oxfam has been also been targeted by the blockade. So this dismantlement and a new system of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has already been criticized, the killing zones, etc. But yet we are not seeing a return to the old system. So
blockade, and we need a restoration of full humanitarian access. And in those first hours or in the first days of, post ceasefire, aid, usually focuses on food, clean water, medical care, and shelter. I mean, these are like kind of the 4 areas where we would, scale up massively and immediately. Children who are, starving, they need immediate nutrition. Hospitals need fuel and supplies. And families, of course, need a safe place to sleep without bombs. So saving lives is about halting excess mass death from famine, from injury, and from disease. And then it comes kind of the second stage, which is early recovery. And that's kind of, the way we look at it is helping reopening schools. I mean, kids in Gaza have not been in schools for 2 years. Getting cash to families so that markets and businesses can restart, supporting farmers with, for example, removing explosive remnants of war from crops, and supporting small businesses. I mean, like you said, Mr. Pseso, debris clearance is a must. It's an absolute priority because we cannot do recovery without proper debris clearance. And so we need a proper commitment to that. I mean, machinery to remove debris is not allowed into Gaza today. I mean, Oxfam is paying daily workers to remove waste with their bare hands. That's how we're working in Gaza right now. Like we're not allowed to enter any machinery to support these daily workers to remove these debris. So that's also, we need those guarantees. And we need, of course, community participation has to happen immediately so that people are part of recovery as well, right? It's not just a top-down effort. We need communities to rebuild kind of their networks and their fabric in order to be part of this recovery effort. And then the third stage is reconstruction. And I want to really underscore that this doesn't mean a return to the failed system of the past. And that's what Oxfam argues in its paper of 2014 about the GRM, the Gaza reconstruction mechanism. It was an utter failure. In fact, it was a tool to re-entrench siege on Gaza. And And even though it was, meant to facilitate imports for rebuilding, in practice, it entrenched Israeli veto power with an arbitrary dual use list that we've never seen, and we continue to not see, and we continue to not know what is on this dual use list, and it blocked thousands of basic materials like pipes and cements, and endless delays and projects that were left incomplete, and essential sector like water and sanitation never recovered actually before even October 2023. The wars, the permanent, subsequent wars between 2007 and 2023 left Gaza permanently vulnerable. And the GRM helped entrench that. And we also cannot accept the new militarized aid model, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, because that entirely bypasses NGOs and UN agencies and funnels aid through militarily, controlled centers. And it strips, and that's essentially what it has done, is that who are these people accountable to? I mean, I have to write a report every month to the EU, a detailed report about everything I do and what I distribute and what money I've spent. Where is the accountability of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation? We want to see their receipts. We want to see what they've spent their money on. We want to see their footage of their security cameras. Why can't we have access to that? So again, it's stripped in, a neutrality, impartiality from our work as principled actors, and it's turned aid into a weapon of war. So aid has to remain civilian-led, it has to remain impartial, and it has to remain rights-based. And then this time, reconstruction has to be Palestinian-led, but this is not just a word. And inclusivity is not just a word. We practice inclusivity, and it has to be rooted in rights. So communities, NGOs, women's groups, they have to be part of the decision making. The goal has to be to rebuild homes, schools, water system, hospitals, everything, energy, in ways that are modern, that are resilient, that are environmentally sound, but that are culturally respectful of what Mr. Bsesa was saying, of what Gaza represents in the Palestinian culture. It is a city that was at the heart of a business for decades, and farming. So we have to also rehabilitate that. So to put it simply, first we stop people from dying, then we help them stand, and then we rebuild, not with militarized or veto-controlled aid, but with a real Palestinian-led system that ensures Gaza can never be starved or destroyed in this way again. And I promise you that the actors are there to do that. We're not gonna, the actors to rebuild to this inclusive Palestinian-led process, they exist, they're just not given the platform to make those decisions. But I promise you, from my work in the last 15 years in the sector, I know that the Palestinians are more than competent to rebuild their own cities and their own homes. We have been doing it for the last 70 years, after all.
Thank you both for reminding us. I think it is crucial, and it's also kind of a really important policy advice to not overlook the communities themselves and their involvement. Throughout the war, we've seen how the fabric worked, how people were supporting. And I can tell you, with my own team in Ramallah as Heinrich-Böll Foundation, we are supporting our Gaza partners who are still inside, in one way or another, and they are doing the actual community work day by day while they try to survive, which means psychosocial support, which means soup kitchens, etc., sharing what is there, dealing with gender issues appearing, etc. So thanks for emphasizing this, both of you. Impatiently, some of the questions directed at us are waiting for us to debate a little bit the governance questions. So not only the political process and what it takes for negotiations, but who should govern Gaza. I want to remind us, before I ask Ghassan to comment possibly, on a statement that was issued 8th of March by the foreign ministers of France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom, that had welcomed the Arab initiative that you mentioned earlier, Ghassan, of a recovery and reconstruction plan for Gaza. And I quote, "Recovery and reconstruction efforts must be based upon a solid political and security framework acceptable to both Israelis and Palestinians, which provides long-term peace and security for both Israelis and Palestinians alike. We are clear that Hamas must neither govern Gaza nor be a threat to Israel anymore. We explicitly support the central role for the Palestinian Authority and the implementation of its reform agenda. And I want to mirror that by The Guardian reporting, quoting most recently Hussam Zomlot, the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, saying the following: there had to be one law, one government, only one police force. We will do that because the main requirement right now is to keep our unity of territorial system. But in the end, Hamas is part of the Palestinian political, national, and social fabric, and they will not just disappear in a second. What we are discussing is not erasure, but reform, change in direction and internal dialogue, so we avert Israel's complete annihilation project. Hassan, what is your take? Who should govern Gaza the day the war is ended, and who should govern Palestine of the future?
And the people of Gaza consider themselves part of the Palestinian entity, Palestinian Authority, Palestinian reality in both West Bank and Gaza Strip. And I think that the Gazans, by large, are interested in maintaining the links and the interaction with the Palestinians in the West Bank. And therefore, there are two proposals that are under discussion. And I don't think that we should go beyond that. And I don't think that Palestinians, especially Gazans, are interested in going beyond that. The first proposal is mainly adopted by Egypt, which is simply about creating an interim governance structure composed of a team of Gazans that needs to be established under the leadership or governance or supervision of the Palestinian Authority, with strong link with the Palestinian Authority. And this body is supposed to be mainly technical, with the political coverage of the PA and the PLO, and with the political coverage and support of the Arab League. And this is temporary for the phase of reconstruction and recovery. And after that, there has to be one political arrangement that includes the West Bank and Gaza, and hopefully that can be consolidated by election when the situations will allow. The other line is to allow the Palestinian Authority to play this role under the supervision and support and with heavy involvement of the international community and the Arab League and the international relevant organizations that has the necessary expertise in reconstruction and humanitarian efforts that will be needed in that situation. These are the two main parameters that are being discussed by Palestinians and preferred by most Palestinians and most Arabs. The problem, and if I'm allowed to go back a little bit to the previous discussion about the reconstruction, I think I agree with all what was said completely, but there are 2 points missing. The first one is, that's why I think that it's a little bit more complicated than what we already heard about it. The first missing aspect is the financing of it. I mean, I did not hear at all in the last year or two any serious commitment by anybody or even proposal about the financing of these efforts. I read most of the proposals, and it describes in a proper technical way how the reconstruction needs to be done, who should be involved, etc., etc. But who is going to finance this? I think it's the level of destruction is beyond the financial ability and financial scope that we heard about and that we are familiar with. That's why I think that this is a key aspect that needs more attention, because it's one thing to have proper plans, and it's another thing to find money to do it. The second is Israel. Israel is going to be a spoiler in the process of reconstruction, because what we hear from the Israelis is that they are intending to maintain at least security role in Gaza. This is what they are doing in Lebanon. This is what they are doing in Syria. This is what they are doing in the whole region. And this is what they are doing in the West Bank. So with possible continued Israeli military or security role in Gaza, I think that there is going to be a big question mark about the possibility of implementing these efforts. That's why I suggest that whoever is trying to plan for that phase, they need to take into consideration the need to prevent any Israeli presence in Gaza, and to think of ways to finance this huge process.
Now, let me ask you quickly back. I mean, on the financial issue, we've heard about the two trust funds, which might be small, might be bigger. What about the Gulf? I mean, what would you imagine should be financial sources? And also, Mamoun,
I can answer this.
Yes, then we bring you in here.
You're asking Dr. Ghassan, or you ask me?
I ask you, Mamoun, now.
Okay, just in a brief, we're talking on this important point, as Dr. Ghassan mentioned, about the finance. So far, $52 billion, according to the World Bank, mostly exceeds 70 billion. So whenever we talk to all international agencies, they said, we want to reconstruct Gaza, but without a sustainable political solution, we are not going to invest $1. So this is the key issue. We discussed this with World Bank, with EU, with the United Nations, with Qatar, with Kuwait, with Saudi Arabia. Everybody is waiting to have a sustainable political solution, because they said, we don't want to invest money, construction, then destruction, construction, then destruction. For example, in the case of EU, in 2008-9 war, EU invested money to rebuild some private sector entities. I was the manager of that project. 2012, same entities destroyed. The Islamic Bank came and put money. After 2 years, same entities destroyed again. Then Kuwait came and paid. After 3 years, destroyed again. So donors said, well, we cannot go into this. So all donors in the meeting, they said, we are looking for sustainable political solution. After that, money will come. And we expect that with the international conference in Cairo that will be held after the war, we will see pledges coming from different organizations. Thank you.
Thanks, Mamoun. Yet I want to go back to the comment of Ghassan saying we have to count in Israel as a spoiler. And that brings us back to the question that I think we can elaborate a little bit more, and Bushra is ready also to come in on what kind of governance, because we need governance, I heard you saying, for the reconstruction process, and without governance that is accepted by the Israeli government, we can't govern Gaza. So who should govern Gaza?
I want to just touch on the financing, just one point.
Sure.
Quickly. Oxfam this year reported that global billionaires' wealth surged by an average of $2 billion a day in 2024, or roughly $5.7 billion a day in the first month of 2025. And the wealth of the world's richest 3,000 billionaires has grown by 6.5 trillion US dollars in real terms over the past decade, while the wealth of the top 1% has increased by over 33.9 trillion dollars since 2015. So there's plenty of money to go around, is my point, if there's political will. I just think like this is it's part of a much more global conversation on distribution of wealth, and how do we tax the rich. And I will refer the audience here to our report on global inequality. So with key recommendations on how we can do that. And if we do that, then I think we would be able to unlock the funding and the financing to rebuild Gaza, at the very least on a very, basic basis. And I have no doubt that the private sector of Palestine will also contribute to that. But just on the governance, I mean, I'm not sure that our, Oxfam's mandate is humanitarian, so we don't decide who governs. But what I can say clearly is that any governance arrangement has to be accountable to us Palestinians ourselves, not imposed externally or militarily. And Gaza, in my sense, cannot be run by ad hoc mechanisms or by the Israeli military or through so-called humanitarian zones controlled by outside powers, because that would just entrench displacement and deny and continue to deny Palestinians their rights. I think governance has to come from an inclusive Palestinian leadership that represents the people of Gaza and the wider Palestinian population through, democratic processes with participation of women, of youth, and civil society. Of course, the Palestinian Authority faces challenges of legitimacy, reform. So, the issues of accountability and transparency and inclusivity within the Palestinian Authority also should be addressed, but the answer cannot be bypassing Palestinians entirely. And on Hamas's role, I mean, it's a political question that Palestinians themselves have to decide. And attempts to militarily erase Hamas is clearly not working. And without addressing the underlying rights and the grievances and Israel's occupation, that will not ever bring stability, clearly. I mean, we have 2 years of this military strategy being tested out, supposedly, according to Israel. I mean, it's not working. Into transition, it has to be a process, right? It can't be imposed by force. And I mean, I think I agree with Mr. Al-Khatib here. Occupation is the biggest obstacle to governance. As long as Israel controls the borders, it controls resources, it controls the finances, it controls the Palestinian Authority, it controls any form of authority, we won't be able to function properly. So ending the blockade and occupation is essential to governance. So who should govern Gaza? It's ultimately for the Palestinians to decide. It's for nobody else to decide. And it has to be, from our perspective as Oxfam, it has to be inclusive and accountable and free from Israel's occupation. There's no governance that's going to be imposed by siege or militarized aid zones. That's not governance. That's just continued dispossession and ethnic cleansing.
Thanks, Bushra. I think I might want to quote at this moment from the declaration of this two-state solution conference that was backed by many Arab countries, some EU and others, which in a way stated that Hamas must end its rule in Gaza and hand over the weapons to the Palestinian Authority. And this is very much, of course, debated in the West. Sort of what kind of transition? We hear you. What do we know about Gazans? Ghassan, JMCC still conducting opinion polls in the West Bank. I don't know if in Gaza more recently, but what is the feel of support or vanishing support to the Harakeh?
First of all, polls in Gaza are not possible from our professional point of view, because there's no consensus and there's no statistics, and the population are in the move. So practically speaking, we tried several times, but we were unable to get proper statistics that we can use for polls. That's why since the war in Gaza, Jerusalem Media and Communication Center has been doing polls in the West Bank only. Therefore, I mean, we have some ideas about the public opinion in Gaza, but not scientific way, and it's based on anecdotes and social media, which I don't trust much. In the West Bank, there has been some changes in the public attitude vis-a-vis the events in Gaza since the beginning of the war until now. People in the beginning were very enthusiastic to what happened on October 7th and felt that at least somebody is able to stand up in the face of the continued Israeli brutality that has been going on against Palestinians and Israel, against Palestinians in both West Bank and Gaza. And it was a period of euphoria, and the popularity of Hamas was reaching the peak. And people were optimistic that this war will end in a way or another to the favor of the Palestinians. But that kept changing because we continued doing polls in the West Bank. And with time, we realized that the optimism of the outcome of these events has been declining. And the confidence that the war will end with an increase in the popularity of Hamas was also in the decline. And also the positive evaluation of the events of October 7th has been also declining. We are now in the middle of conducting a public opinion poll, which will be published with the second anniversary of the war. And we expect a continuity of the same trends that I referred to.
Thank you. Mamoun,
I have a
you
comment.
might want to come in on Gaza.
I have just a quick comment on the governance and the after. You know, we are afraid that interim solution becomes permanent. And this is the dilemma in the Palestinian issues. Like UNRWA, for example, came as interim solution. Now it has been around for more than 75 years. And same for Oslo Accord. They said we have interim Palestinian government, and now we are still for. So we are afraid when the Israeli, Egyptian, Qatar, etc., they talk about interim arrangement in Gaza for 6 months. This will become permanent. So we don't like any interim arrangement. We think after this devastation and victims, time has come to have a political solution, starting with end of occupation, end of siege, having Palestinian unity government across Gaza and West Bank. Palestinians got united, no more political division. After some time, we have election and we have reform in the political system. We don't have time to waste in the interim solution. We like to have a permanent solution. So we finish the war and we start our prosperity and our peace. Thank you.
But let me ask you back. Maybe this is naive to ask, but would not an interim governing structure be better than a continued military presence?
Well, unfortunately, Israel is pushing us to accept and not ideal situation. So our ideal solution is to have a permanent political solution. If not, we accept this as a temporary measure, as advised by the Egyptian. This is a temporary measure, but still we are concerned that this temporary measure will become permanent. For our best interest as Gaza people, we want Palestinian Authority to come back to Gaza. We want unity government to back to Gaza. We want to have two political systems, one in Ramallah and one in government. We don't want to have a de facto government in Gaza and other legitimate government in Ramallah. This made it worse. It does not solve our problems. Thank you.
That brings me to another question about the PA, of course. And Bushra, you indicated need for reform, revitalizing, legitimacy questions, etc. In the West Bank, I hear a lot of criticism from civil society actors towards the current Palestinian Authority, regardless to say that the Israeli occupation is undoubtedly limiting the Palestinian governance through its military and administrative control, restricting movements, as we said, of people and goods, and financially sanctioning the PA. But where's the deficiencies, and how can it be reformed or revitalized? Is there a political will for reform? Maybe Ghassan, as it's not Bushra's mandate, she said, as Oxfam.
Well, I mean, I can contribute to answering this question. Well, that was a hot issue until recently because many people were concerned. I mean, many people in Palestine and among the international community that are involved in supporting Palestine and Palestinians, and also among Arabs, that there is a need, in order to be able to support the PA, there is a need for reforms, elections, financial reforms, governance reforms, etc., etc. And there were some cooperation by the PA with this, but not quite enough. But that continued until the recent developments in which Israel has been imposing sanctions on the Palestinian Authority of the kind that is promising the collapse of the Palestinian Authority. I think that the current Israeli government is clearly, and they're not hiding this intention, they're saying it out loud, they have the intention of pushing the Palestinian Authority for collapse. The Palestinian Authority hasn't been able to fulfill its duties in terms of the services, salaries, medical services, health services, education services. And this is all caused by intentional Israeli sanctions. I'm sorry. In addition to this, Israel has been suffocating the Palestinian Authority by the expansion of settlements that was referred to in the beginning of the discussion, and by the restrictions on movement. So the PA is pushed to collapse, and it's completely crippled. And therefore, the discussion about reform is becoming too luxury compared to the reality. And I think that Israel is pushing the PA to collapse, and I think that this is going to happen. And I dare to say that we are already in the beginning of the collapse of the Palestinian Authority, because there is no sign that Israel is going to stop these three lines of policies that are definitely going to suffocate the Palestinian Authority: the economic sanctions, the restrictions on movement, and the increase in settlement expansion and settlers' terrorism in the Palestinian Authority. So yes, reforms are very necessary, but now we have more urgent situations, which is how to prevent the collapse of the PA.
I think the urgency is fully understood. Yet I'm tempted to ask you back if elections in the near future would possibly, like sort of avoid a collapse by taking firm action to more legitimacy on the ground.
Election is very much required, and there is a strong interest among Palestinian people, and there is very strong push by the public itself and by civil society, especially on the Palestinian Authority to go for elections. And there is also pressure from outside. So there is pressure on the PA from inside and from outside for elections, because the backbone of any reforms is election. But now, with the current reality on the ground, election is not possible practically. With the situations in Gaza, and it doesn't make sense, of course, to have election only in the West Bank. And even in the West Bank, 2 years ago, we had the issue of preventing election in Jerusalem as an excuse for not having election. So now, with the current reality on the ground, election is not possible given the Israeli restrictions and given what's happening in Gaza. But I think that otherwise, election is the most important requirement and the backbone for reforms, and it's overdue. And I think with the first possible, practically possible opportunity, the Palestinian people should go definitely for election.
And here's a question of one of the participants, which I want to continue with, taking us back to Hamas. How do you see a future role of Hamas? They will not give up their power completely, so there could be a spoiler too. Will the political wing win influence over the military one? Maybe we ask Ma'moun to come in. Ghassan, Bushra, please.
Thank you very much. I think Hamas people already announced last year that they are ready to give up Gaza Strip to other political regime, and they said our best option to have a Palestinian unity government was not an option, so they agreed to have this interim technical group to rule Gaza, so they accepted that. Now, on the other issue, when the Israel mount more pressure on Hamas on the handover of weapons, Hamas told the Egyptian that we don't mind to hand over our weapons to Egypt, not to Israel. Not to Israel. We don't mind to hand over our weapons to Egypt. Egypt said yes, we can store it somewhere here, and we prevent Hamas from using this. So Hamas, day after day, they give more concessions, but this was not accepted by Israel, as they want to destroy Hamas completely. Now, what Israel does not understand, that Hamas is part of our community, is part of our mosaic. You cannot kill 2 million people to destroy Hamas. Like some people, they support Hamas by heart. And more important, Hamas is a faith-based. As far as some Muslims, they think as part of Islam, they should support this group. So you cannot kill a faith-based organization. So politically, Hamas, he said, yes, we don't mind to give up. And they said this in the first weeks of the war, but Israel does not allow that. So now, what solution we have? Either to have unity government, it's not applicable from Israel. So we have the interim agreement, which already Hamas agreed, and they agreed on the names. They put names and formulation, and Hamas agreed on everything, and they said we are ready to hand over all the governance, hand over our weapons, but we need to stop the war. Thank you.
Bushra, you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that any future in Gaza is going to have to grapple with the fact that Hamas is a political and military actor that's long held influence. And it's unlikely that, I mean, like Mr. Pseso said, their power is not going to disappear overnight. But I think from a humanitarian perspective, what matters most, at least for us, is that any government arrangement, whether it's transitional, whether it's reform, whether it's internationally supported, it prioritizes the protection of Palestinian civilians, it ensures their access to aid, and it upholds international law. And of course, there's certainly a risk that Hamas could act as a spoiler in political process if it's excluded entirely. But again, it's not for humanitarians to determine. But our concern, I think, is that if the political track doesn't take account of realities on the ground, including actors who continue to exercise influence, then civilians in Gaza are going to be, again, the ones that pay that price. And so whether the political or the military wings prevail, it's ultimately an internal Palestinian question. But what we call for is that the political space is widened so that Palestinian civil society, women, youth, and a broad spectrum of representatives can have a say in shaping a future that goes beyond also the control of armed actors. And the priority must be, again, to end the siege, to halt the violence, and to create conditions where recovery and reconstructions are actually possible. And because without this, Gaza and the entire kind of context risks being locked into the cycle where humanitarian needs are manipulated, and then peace, will forever remain out of reach.
Thanks, Bushra. I would feel tempted to also ask about accountability. I mean, should the Palestinians hold some of the military leaders accountable for war crimes, etc.?
All perpetrators of violence, against innocent civilians should be held accountable under international law. Nobody has, I think, claimed the opposite. Whether it's armed groups, whether it's criminals, whether it's the settlers, whether it's the Israeli military, everybody should be held accountable for violations of international law. But I would say that the greater responsibility is Israel as an occupying power. Has legal duties and obligations that it's not abiding by under international law, and should be, as the occupying power, actually protecting the Palestinian civilian population. It's done entirely the opposite. So, but yes, of course, there's no doubt about that.
Thank you for not having a doubt about that as an answer. That's very clear and understood. I'm running out of time with you here. I would have loved to bring up more questions, but there was one particularly that fits now, possibly, which is the role of the ICG and the ICC in the coming month. Maybe, Bushra, you quickly continue because you brought them up.
I saw the question, but at the end of the day, the ICJ and the ICC are tools. If there's nobody to activate the tools, they're useless. So if Germany doesn't, take its role seriously in upholding international law, in implementing its obligations under international law, including the ICJ's provisional measures, both in the case of South Africa, but also the ICJ advisory opinion from July 2024 on the legality of occupation, it's up to the state, to the member state. The ICJ cannot enforce. It is a tool. It's not an end. And so the measures provided by the ICJ, and the ICJ has done its work, but it's up to states to follow up on that work.
Thank you, Bushra. Leaves me only to say that there was many questions in the chat about the role of the Greens and the Heinrich-Böll Foundation. I don't think there is enough room today to answer that, and possibly we are not prepared to answer these questions yet, but I think therefore it was wonderful to hear from three experts. There was one particular question I would like to end this discussion on, which was towards the German public, the streets, so to say, because we see a lot of protests. There's a major demonstration announced for the 27th of September, and one of the participants asked you, the speakers, to give ideas, wishes for solidarity. You've given us a lot already, but is there something particularly you want to say to German activists? And with this, I pick up an idea that Dr. Hassan shared with me when we sat over coffee in Ramallah, saying that the hope is possibly with the people of the various nations, be it in the global south and in the west and north and east. So would you like to express something to the...
Yeah, I first want to say that we are really, Palestinians, we are really grateful for the attention and for the enthusiastic support by the public in many Western countries, including Germany. We know how sensitive things are in Germany, and yet we see a growing public sympathy and active support to the Palestinians against the Israeli genocide. And it's interesting to end with the same point that I started with, saying that our only source of hope is the growing public pressure on Western governments in order to achieve some changes in the attitude and practice of these Western governments, because it is the only source of hope. This is the only source of hope for meaningful, practical influence on Israel against the current Israeli genocide.
I think this we will take, Dr. Ghassan, thank you very much, as an encouraging last word. I want to thank you very much. I think many of the participants, and you saw that in the chat, appreciated your openness, your frankness, sharing your perspectives, profound knowledge, as Mamoun knows so much deep insight and so detailed, and you shared only a little bit of your excellent expertise. Thank you for your political analysis, be it mandate or not, humanitarian insights. I think it is very important, and referring back to what the Heinrich-Böll Foundation or what the Greens or the political elite in Germany should do, I think it is important for all of us to sit down and listen to you, because you know the realities on the ground and you analyze. And thanks for talking to us, opening up, giving your personal accounts, your daily bread and butter and work and analysis. Thanks for being with us. This debate is recorded. Participants can share it. Some of them already mentioned that they want to share this valuable insights with others. Thank you so much, Dr. Ghassan, Bushra, Mamoun, for being with us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.